Good afternoon, everyone. It's my great honor to welcome you all to this special event hosted by the Akshaya Patra Foundation, a leadership talk series empowering change. Today, immensely fortunate to have with us an exemplary leader today and visionary, Mr. Suresh Narayanan, Chairman and Managing Director of Nestle India.
On behalf of 2.2 million children we serve every day in over 24,000 schools, 16 states and 2 union territories, I warmly welcome Mr. Suresh Narayanan and Mrs. Suresh Narayanan for this event at Akshaya Patra. I would also like to welcome his leadership team which has come from Bangalore and all the beneficiaries who are here because of whom we exist. Thank you, Hemant, and all the beneficiaries who are here. You have made us proud.
It's been 14 years, to be precise, 5,155 days that my journey with Akshaya Patra started. In the year 2010, where I was first introduced to Akshaya Patra midday meal in my 8th standard, that time the food was not only the source of a midday meal that you used to get in the afternoons, but it was a source of energy, motivation, also a discipline that we used to cultivate, because of which we could able to excel in our academics. 22 November, I cleared my CA, after which I joined Deloitte India as a tax professional, where I'm currently working from 1.5 years in India practice corporate taxation. In the year 2023 August, we had this Akshaya Patra alumni network where I was elected as a chairperson. It was not a position of honor or something. It is for me to give back to the organization which I am standing in front of you. What am I today? I am talking to you. What are the achievements that I did? It's all because of the team efforts that I had as a family. I'm with Akshaya Patra more than half of my age. I'm just 26. But with Akshaya Patra, I'm like 14 years having that connection.
It's always so heartwarming to hear you, Hemant. We are immensely proud of you and your entire journey, and I'm sure there's so much more to come on your way. So now, without wasting any time, we would like to welcome our guest of honor, an exemplary leader, Mr. Suresh Narayanan, has consistently guided Nestle towards progress with dignity and unwavering values. His commitment to people, purpose, and partnership is evident in his promotion of diversity, inclusivity, and corporate principles. His career, spanning over 3 decades across various countries, is a remarkable story of perseverance, strategic foresight, and a steadfast commitment to values. Without further delay, please join me in welcoming to stage Mr. Suresh Narayanan, a true leader and inspiration. Thank you so much, sir.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and good afternoon, everyone at Akshaya Patra. Thank you, Sridhar Venkat, for inviting me today to not only, I don't know who's going to be the beneficiary and who's going to be the benefactor. I think I will be the beneficiary today by what I have seen and what I have witnessed of the work that you do. 2.2 million children every day being fed with nutritious quality food across 23,000, 24,000 schools in this country is no mean achievement. I head one of the largest food companies, and I marvel at the way in which you serve fresh food to children across the world, and indeed across India as well. When I was first requested by Sridhar to give a talk on leadership, I wondered who's going to teach whom on leadership. Because I think what you have done as Akshaya Patra is truly miraculous. Is really something that is a lodestone, is a benchmark, is a lighthouse on what an organization can do with purpose. And what I will be doing with you today is trying to share with you a long corporate journey of trying to emulate some of the values that you have internalized so well for so long. And I'm delighted to see a young audience in front of me because that gives me hope. when I met the two Prabhujis in the morning, I said, one of the things that strike me about the organization is the amount of youth that is involved in this mission. And that gives hope for the future, because most organizations today suffer from some form of decay, because you don't know what the next generation is going to do or likely to do. Whereas at Akshaya Patra, you have that next generation mapped out. So whenever Sridhar Venkat decides to do something else in life, or in fact decides to do something different, there is a whole generation of people in the organization who are ready to take on the mantle of leadership. So I will be briefly sharing with you a personal journey, and some of it is of relevance to you, some of it is not really of relevance to you, but it is a personal journey. So it's really something that I've been through that I would like to share with you. I think if there is nothing else that you can get from this presentation of mine, which is trying to bring together various leadership lessons that I have learned in almost 4 decades of work. The first one is crisis is the new normal. I think we are today surrounded by different form of crises. Crises of values, crises of humanity, crisis of war, crisis of famine, crisis of war-related hunger, right? As we speak to each other today, there is a Sudan which is having more than 1.5 million people who are in dire need of food. As I speak to you today, there is a war in the Middle East, and there is a war in Ukraine, and there is war in different parts of the world. And God only knows how many million people are being deprived each day. So while some children, 2.2 million children in India, have the benefit of an Akshaya Patra, there are numerous children across the world with no benefit of any Akshaya Patra. Even remoteness of the Akshaya Patra is not there. So crisis is the new normal, and therefore all of you young people working in the organization can anticipate, if not good times, you can anticipate that worse times will probably happen before good times really start to happen. So there is a lot of resilience that crisis needs to bring to you, and crisis of conscience in the corporate world. Right? Today, you have examples of corporations that are going belly up, not because they had lousy strategies, not because they had lousy people. It's because they had greedy, self-aggrandizing, hopelessly narcissistic leadership that took the company down the chute. That's a crisis in itself, and it takes decades for the company to come back. So crisis is the new normal, is what I would say from all points of view. It's a little bit of a depressing thought, but I think you in Akshaya Patra, you see the reality every day of children and how children crave for the food that you provide. And that is the reality that's going to face us for a long time. Secondly, leadership defines how to cope with it. I think this is a much bandied word, but also a word that has lost some meaning in some parts. Leadership is not associated with designations. Being called a CEO or being called a chairman or being called X, Y, and Z is not leadership. Leadership is what you do to an organization to inspire a group of disparate people to come to a common cause and to do the things that are right for society, for the organization, and for the people. You exemplify that. The two gentlemen that I met in the morning truly inspired me because they are examples of leadership and visionary leadership. And that comes because you are selfless in what you do. The day you become selfish in what you do, if the Prabhus decided that their path to glory is going to be to become very famous spiritual leaders or great leaders with a huge amount of influence, you would not have had an Akshaya Patra. Believe you me, you could have all been here, you could have done the best practices, you could have done the best business ethics or whatever else that you're doing, public-private partnerships, you could have not got it right. It is that leadership and that singular focus on purpose and making things happen selflessly for decades that has made it happen. So don't lose it. don't lose that perspective, because that perspective is very important. A leader doesn't have to be physically present in the room in order to make things happen. The thought of his manifestation itself is good enough to make things happen. And that's the beauty that you have in your organization. The third, and this is for all young people, I learned it pretty late in my own life, is managing self is more than 50% of the problem. We are living in stress times. We are living in times when what we want to achieve is not achieved, is aborted because of various reasons. Either you overshoot or you undershoot. Either your expectations are too high or too low. Either you are depressed or dissatisfied with the environment around you, or you see a lot of people going in for a huge amount of greed to grab whatever they can. That sets you off on a different path. And that path sometimes is destructive. You don't realize that it is all to do with your feelings and your emotions. In the corporate world, this is manifest in a word called ego. Right? When we have egos which are much bigger than what we are as human beings, it transcends into actions that are desperate, that are divisive, that are discordant, and that destroy. And simply put, if you were to look at what you need at that point in time, is an ability to introspect and to manage yourself, to manage your emotions, to manage your feelings, to manage your responses. And as a leader especially so, it becomes very, very important. All of us in our lives will go through a crisis. In the corporate world, you lead teams. You have 9,000 employees in Akshaya Patra, all of whom are united and in unison for a single cause. In a corporate world, you lead 9,000 people, but not everybody is with your cause. Somebody is just there for the moolah, somebody is just there for the money, somebody is just there for the designation, somebody is just there for the fame. And to get them all together and to get them to a cause, especially at a difficult time, is managing the self. So as young people, manage yourself and manage your expectations. As you are young and committed to a cause, you will have people telling you, oh, but why are you working at Akshaya Patra? You should be working at, you should be working in some corporate. You should be doing something else. Right? And that sets a discordant note in your own minds. But remember that if you don't expel that and you don't manage that, you're going to have more problems in your life. And in all the crises that I've had the kind of pain or the pleasure of handling, I've always noticed that this third element, managing the self, is more than 50% of the problem. When I look hopeful, my team is hopeful. When I smile, the team smiles. When I am surly, when I am angry, when I am nervous, when I am hesitant, the whole team gets hesitant. And that is not what leadership should be all about. But that's what leadership descends into. So manage this one. The fourth one, which is all the learnings of your Akshaya Patra applied in the corporate world, is empowerment, enablement, and engagement. You are all empowered people in this organization. You are all enabled people, engaged people in this organization. When you make 2.2 million children smile every day, it is the collective acts of 9,000 people and more that makes it happen. It's not done by one person. Mr. Sridhar Venkat is the CEO of the organization. He is a moving force. Prabhujis are moving forces. They determine what happens in the organization. But they don't determine whether that last child is fed with the food that he or she should be on that particular day. And this is something which is an important aspect of organizations and teamwork. Those organizations that do it well succeed. Some organizations don't do it well, where Parabrahma is one person. He decides everything. He decides whether this is right or wrong, this is red or blue, this is orange or pink, or he decides whether this should be large or small. And then you land up with an organization that is so centered on one person. If that person vanishes, or God forbid drops dead, the organization vanishes. It is said about the herd of bison in the United States. The bison herd has been extinct. Why? Because there's one lead bison that goes in front and all the other bison trail it. The hunter figured out that if I shoot that head bison, that's it. The rest of the team is in disarray. And that's why leadership gets extinct, because one person decides to do everything. A flock of geese doesn't do that. They fly in a V formation where each one is supporting the other to fly higher because of drag. What we need are more flocks of geese rather than bisons. Bisons are more evocative. They show a macho, raw power of glory, but they also portend imminent death if not handled properly. And the last one, which is probably the single most important feature which corporates today struggle with. And let me admit this to you, this is a struggle for all of us. It is a cakewalk for you. It's purpose and values. Organizations move or perish because of purpose and values. If purpose and values are enshrined, magic happens. Give a person purpose and magic happens. You don't have to be told each day that you have to deliver quality food at the appropriate time to the children in a school in Hubli who's waiting for the food to arrive. You do it. Why do you do it? Not because there is an immediate potential payoff to you, saying, I'm going to get 5 rupees per plate that I'm going to be serving. No. You do it because you're committed to the cause of feeding poor children in this company and having a Hemant come and talk to you afterwards saying, this is the benefit that I have got and I want to give back. That's what makes you do what you do. Nothing else. You're not here to be millionaires and billionaires. You would have done something else in life if you wanted to be that. You're not seeking power, fame, or glory. You would have done something else in life. But you do what you do because that's what drives you. And great organizations succeed because of purpose and values. Sridhar was very kind to refer to me on the value of respect. Why do I harp on it? Because I struggle to make that the focus of the organization. Not everybody believes in it. Not everyone subscribes to it. Not everyone thinks it's a great idea. But when they practice it, you realize that being kind, being compassionate, being empathetic, and being respectful is actually good. You can be a high-performing company. I lead a company which is a high-performing company. But we are respectful to each other. We are kind to each other. We are compassionate to each other. During COVID, we publicly announced, and I publicly announced, that nobody will lose their job. Nobody. It was a chance that I took. It was well beyond my pay grade, but I said it. Because I said, what is most important to that person is the job at that point in time. And if I were to tell him that, look, if the business doesn't go well, maybe your job is on the line, how would he respond to purpose and values? So these are essentials, but I will take you through my own little journey. My own little journey, I will not dwell much on it because it's like every other journey in this room. I come from a very middle-class family. My father was in the government, was a bureaucrat, and there was enough for the family, but no luxuries. We had no luxuries, right? My father was also frugal by nature, and therefore he said, this is it, and it's a different generation. It's a generation where parents decided everything from the shirt you wore to the food you ate, right? Today you're able to challenge your parents on things that you may choose to challenge. In my time, there was less of challenge. So I went through, the greatest gift my parents gave me was outstanding schooling. I went to a school called Rishi Valley, not very far from here, and that built certain values in me. And I think that is the gift that parents, that schools give to children. It's a lasting gift. You don't appreciate it when you are in it. When J. Krishnamurti, the late philosopher, used to come and speak to us, I was too young to understand. So when he said, watch the leaves and look at the leaves fall from the tree, I was busy looking at a little bit of a cockroach going somewhere or a rat running somewhere, not bothered about this leaf falling from it. Or when he said the guru is within you, I wondered what guru is he talking about. It didn't really make sense. But later on, somewhere in the latent mind, it comes back. And when it matters, it starts to play. So the greatest gift that all of you have had, and that's why you are here, is because of these values being put into your head. Hard work, humility, tenacity, compassion, empathy, respect, and above all, being conscious and being purposeful in whatever you do. So that set me off on a corporate career. I was in a corporate career more by accident. I wanted to be a bureaucrat, but that didn't happen. So I got into the corporate world. And I've been 4 decades in the corporate world across 3 companies. Hindustan Unilever, which was that was a symbol in those days. People Leaf, Colgate, and Nestle. And then I had the privilege of having some international assignments in Thailand, in Singapore, in Egypt, in Philippines, and then of course I came back to India in 2015 to head the current company. So I truly believe that I have been blessed with a great corporate career across 3 companies, all of whom have got a deep sense of purpose and values. And that's the one advice I give youngsters. When I talk at business schools, the context is different. There are consulting companies and investment banks and various other things. And youngsters get attracted towards the biggest name. I say your biggest challenge is to find a company that speaks to your values, that speaks to your purpose. Yes, they give you a decent salary and perquisites and all that. That's important. I mean, leading a decent life is your right. But if you are in a dissonant organization, it's going to be even more difficult. And I can say after 40 years of working across these organizations, even during the worst crises, I have slept like a baby. I've never suffered from lack of sleep or a huge amount of stress or a huge amount of anxiety. Because I have kept to the purpose and values that I was born with in organizations that respected those purpose and values. So it's important that wherever you are, you keep those and keep them in mind, because that is really important for all of us. As Nelson Mandela said, the greatest glory in living lies not in never falling, but in rising every time we fall. We will all fall. As human beings, we'll all fall. But we have this ego that blocks us from saying, I have not fallen. The reality doesn't hit you. But the reality is, every time you fall, if there is an urge to stand up and walk again, you are a different man. And who better than Nelson Mandela to tell you it, because he spent almost 3 decades in jail and still came out to lead a country. So he fell, but he rose. And I think that is the challenge of continuity and leadership and conscience that is extremely important. I've had a very checkered career, so I will not go through it because that's not the purpose of this talk. Been through different cultures, I've enjoyed different cultures, worked in different geographies, learned that human beings are united by a common thread of respect, dignity, and love. Across cultures, we may all be different, we may be professing different religions, we may be speaking different languages, we may be in different cultures, but what unites us are these 3 fundamental human values that are so very important to us. That also gave the privilege of me traveling with my wife Rajita, who's here, and our daughter, to different cultures, experiencing different places. And one thing that I can tell you at this stage in life, those of you who are married, it's a blessing to have a partner who's understanding and who's capable of bearing with all the troubles and all the vagaries that your life, your career demands. So I am deeply grateful to my wife. I say this in front of her because I think it's very, very important. It's very important to have that anchor in your life. The second anchor that they serve, both my wife and daughter, is to keep me on the ground. Right? There is no feeling of feeling superior. So every time I kind of feel a little bit elated, they say, you know, you're a pompous old windbag, and they want me to come down a bit, which is also good, because I think ultimately you realize that you come with nothing and you go with nothing, and all the interim noise that you make is only for your ears, and nobody else seems to be hearing it. So one of the experiences that I had was the Arab Spring. I mean, we were posted in Egypt in 2010, October, when it was considered to be a very peaceful place. I was told by my boss that, you know, nothing changes in Egypt. The pharaonic system has given rise to dictators, and dictators will continue. The dust on the pyramid, the sands on the pyramid will not descend. The flow of the river Nile will be in the same direction. Nothing has ever changed in that country. And within a couple of months, we had the Arab Spring. Right? It was a time of acute uncertainty. It was a voicing of the discontent and dissent of the youth with the state of affairs in that country. They had nothing against me or against my family, because we were Indians and we were friends. But nevertheless, it was chaotic because the internet got cut, there were tanks on the road, and there was a bit of uncertainty that happened there. But in the Arab Spring itself, I learned a few lessons. And the first lesson I learned is, in a crisis, do you disengage or do you engage? What should you be doing? One option in front of the team was stop everything, shut everything down, wait for a better day to come. But the team pushed back and said, no sir, we have to engage. We have to do more work with consumers, more work with society, more work with stakeholders, more work on investments, more work in terms of extending the reach of the talent of the company, and not less. It's a perspective sometimes. But it's an important perspective, because sometimes in life you come across these crossroads and you decide to hunker down and say, I will not do anything for the future. But unless you do something for the future, nothing is going to happen. And that was something that came out as a huge learning for me. After about 14 days, Mr. Hosni Mubarak, who was the dictator, decided to go to Sharm el-Sheikh, which was where his home was. And people convinced him that you are not wanted as a leader. So my team and I, we decided to go and see. We had two factories, both of them in a kind of a semi-war zone of the industrial area. We wanted to go and see whether there was anybody coming to attend the factory. And my technical director and I, we were driving down, and I was guessing with him. I said, look, how many people do you think will come? He said, maybe 4 or 5 people, maybe nobody at all, because there's still curfew around the city. I said, yeah, maybe 1 or 2 people, if they come, it will be a big deal. And we go to the first factory, 100% attendance, 100%. So we asked them. I didn't speak the language, but through a translator, I said, look, please ask the people, the union leader, why have they come? And they said, sir, 3 things for us. Number 1, for us, loyalty to this organization is paramount. This has fed our families. We will never, ever compromise on that. Second, when the older members in my family fall sick, this company stands by me, always and every time. And third, you never left us. You never left us. You didn't decide to pack up your bags. In fact, my wife and I, we wanted to stay there, both of us together, but she had to move because, there was a protocol that families had to, and children had to move. So one of the important lessons of leadership, which is simple, but which is extremely important at times of difficulty, and indeed at even in good times, is that a leader never leaves. A leader who walks away, a leader who abdicates, a leader who obfuscates, a leader who avoids, a leader who pins the blame on someone else. That's a typical response. I didn't do it, he has gone and done it. Right? If the organization doesn't take impact of it, if there is a quality issue, for example, And if I don't take the responsibility for it as the head of the company, and I say, no, it's not me, even though technically it might be true that I'm not physically involved in that process. But morally, the leader is responsible for even a fly that sits on the table in that room in which he has got the domain of being the leader. This is the way in which leadership has been defined in our scriptures. That's the way it has been defined. Leadership has not been defined as running away from the scene of battle. We all know what Krishna told Arjuna, right? When he wanted to run away from the scene of battle. What was that lesson in? That was a lesson in leadership. You can't run away, my friend. This is it. Your karma is here, your dharma is here. You have to be here. And that's what is the call of leadership. If that doesn't appeal to you, don't be a leader. Don't waste your time and don't waste everybody else's time, because then you're ruining people's lives. People are at the heart of everything. This you all know. But at that point in time, when a country was in crisis, when consumers had to be fed, and shops were opening between 2 o'clock and 6 o'clock in the morning, there was one salesman who was there all the time to give the Nestle brands, the Nestle salesman. Why did he do it? Did he do it because I gave him an extra $1? No. Did he do it because I gave him an extra certificate or an extra promotion? Nothing. He did it because he took it as his dharma to ensure that the consumer got the brands of the company. We talked about purpose. This is what purpose is in action. During COVID time, we have a health science business, and we produce a product called Peptamen, which is normally used for post-operative care. After post-operative care, the protein supplementation is done with Peptamen. There was this young girl in Indore who had been through a surgery, but because of COVID, there was no Peptamen available, or it was available just for a day. So her parents called up desperately one of my sales staff and said, if we don't get Peptamen, our daughter's life is in danger. This gentleman called up his colleague in Ahmedabad and he said, please take your car and drive down to Indore. In COVID times, come and give this, because this child will otherwise have a very, very painful time. This incident came to light to me much after the incident happened. It was not that I picked up the phone and said, please come and please go and please do it. But why does that happen? Why do we underestimate the power of people? Because we think that they're all working for a salary, they're all working for a perquisite, they're all working because they have nothing else to do in life. So when you put people centricity and when you create the magic around people, like you do in Akshaya Patra, you have training programs for your people. It's not that you just do the routine jobs that you do, you constantly upgrade yourself. Calling a person like me on an audience here is to give you a different flavor of what somebody else does, and hopefully reinforces some of the principles that you follow, saying this must be important because somebody else is also doing this. But people centricity is really at the center of this. During this period in Egypt, we grew by almost 25% each year for 5 years in a row. We invested in that company more than 5 times what we had invested in the previous 15 years. And yes, it was an Arab Spring, and yes, it was a storm. But again, people make that happen. The third lesson I learned is adversity builds strength. These days we try and make our children prone to, or we insulate them from adversity. Because we say, we are around as parents, you should not have any adversity. But the best learning, the best teacher is adversity. When you are going through adverse times, your muscles, your emotions, your actions, and your mindset trains itself differently. You realize there is threat. You either fight or you take flight. And in that kind of situation, the learnings from adversity is truly commendable. I keep encouraging youngsters, take difficult assignments in your life. Take difficult steps to learn the experience of what it takes to work in adversity. If you do that, then you become a stronger leader. Remember, all of us have muscles. If we strain our muscles and we use them well, we last long. If we don't use those muscles, they get atrophied. Adversity is like a muscle that needs to be flexed at points in time for you to test yourself on how much of adversity and how much of challenge you're able to bear in your lives. So after 5 years in Egypt, normally in my company they give you what is called an easy posting. So I was given the Philippines, which is a nice place, a great country, a great business for the company, lovely office, everything great. But for some people, as they say that your kundli or your jada ridi, as they say, is something different, right? You always land up in some difficult situation. So one difficult situation in Singapore, there was a Lehman Brothers collapse, and the business collapsed, and we had to hold our head above water. In Egypt, 5 years, again, everything collapsed, and everything had to be resurrected. Philippines, everything was great. So a breather, but I think even the Lord decided that that is a bit too much of luxury for me, and decided that I got the call to come back to India, which was at that time impacted by what is now called the Maggie crisis. This was a crisis about 10 years ago. Some of you might remember it. It was a crisis of what we had not done, but we were accused of having done, and what we were unable to communicate, what we should have communicated. That's the simple message on this. It was a huge crisis, and sometimes you wonder, why is it you? In fact, I did ask my wife. I said, after so many 300,000 employees, there is this one fellow who's asked to go back and take care of it. And then my father once stepped in and he said, actually they must be trusting you. If they don't trust you, they don't put an idiot or a monkey into a crisis. They put somebody whom they feel is capable of handling a crisis. So this was of mega proportions. 400,000 wheat farmers, 1.3 million outlets, 1,700 distributors, 6,500 field force, more than 9,000 people impacted, 5 out of the then 8 factories shut, Maggie crisis in Bangladesh, ripple effect in Sri Lanka, the business on fire. More importantly, an organization that is known to be a family suddenly goes up in smoke, because you become the attention of the media and of the regulator and of everybody else during that period. At that time, there was no GST, there was no demonetization, there was no COVID, there was no nothing. This is the one brand that kept flashing on the newspapers. In fact, normally when there's a CEO change in the company, it is mentioned one line somewhere in the 5th page of the newspaper. This is the first time it came as headlines, right? Indian comes to save Swiss multinational. So that also some bit of drama has to be put. What do you do in a situation like this? Again, you go back to the tenets of leadership. Number 1, learn to manage yourself. You don't know how deep the crisis is. Within 3 days of coming, I had to have an interview, a public interview with CNBC, and I told Shireen Bhan, who's since become a friend, I said, I don't know the full extent of the crisis. She said, sir, but you are the managing director. You have to know it. I will ask you questions. It was the most publicly watched interview because it was the first time Nestle wanted to say something about it. The only other time I had done a public interview was in Egypt. It was lip-synced into Arabic. And somebody told me, you speak good Arabic. I said, I don't speak a word. But there is something there that the fellow got translated, right? The role that you play in a crisis of this kind is 2. 1, manage yourself and ask the right questions. Don't give all the answers. Ask the right questions. And be a friend to some, be an elder brother to some, and be a partner to some. Because people were worried. Nestle is like people in Akshaya Patra. We work for a long time. 25, 30 years is common. Right? I give every year 35-year awards in a factory in Moga, where the Sikh operator has the turban, the suit, and his wife's salwar kameez in the same color combination. And I asked him, why do you do it? He said, sir, after my marriage date, this is the second most important date in my life, that you come and give me a 35-year award. That tells me that I have served this company for 35 years. It's a very proud company. It's a family company, but a very proud company where respect, intergenerational respect is very important. So there were people who came and told me that, look, I have my daughter to be married, my son to be educated, and if I lose my job, I'm finished. Was I able to assure him that he will not lose his job? I didn't know. So I said, we'll work on this together. We'll try and see what we can do about it. So the people connect part of it plays a most important role, because people then take the message from you. If you are hopeless, if you are despondent, if you are defeated, they are defeated. And that is the biggest tragedy, that you had a hope of coming out of a crisis and you'll dig yourself deeper into a crisis. So that's how it manifested. Again, give a man purpose and the rest will follow. This is your lesson too. This is your lesson too. Give a man, a woman a purpose and everything follows. The only mantra in my company at that point in time was to get Maggie back. The legal guys, the corporate affairs guys, the manufacturing guys, the marketing guys, and we had millions of consumers writing to us, consumers like you writing to us saying that we miss Maggie. So we said we miss you too. We put out those numerous ads. Because this is a brand that has been built on the equity of consumers. But when you give people magic, give them purpose, materials were coming in a third of the time. Why? Because people were traveling along with the truck, carrying the material to the factories so that they are in time. Raw material comes in 5 days. Lot of it is wheat-based, because the wheat miller said, sir, we will help you. Because you have been a decent company to us all the time. We will help you when things go wrong. Point of sale material in 20 days. System readiness. Our machines were idle for 5 months. But yes, not 1 day's salary of any employee was reduced. Not one employee went on a strike. And not one employee went to the media saying what a lousy company Nestle was. That's the strength of culture. That's the strength of culture. We sometimes discount it. We sometimes underestimate it. We are more interested in financial matrices. What return on investment have you had, and what price earnings have you had? What is your share price? What is your revenue growth? What you don't forget is that in tough times, it is your values that speak. As Kabir once said, he said, Dukh mein sumiran sab kare, sukh mein kare na koi, jo sukh mein sumiran kare, dukh kahe ko hoy. In bad times, you pray. But if you pray in good times, why should bad times come upon you? The value of culture and purpose. If there's one message I would like to pleadingly leave with you, is never ever compromise on the purpose and values that have united your organization. Because all of this makes things happen. All of this made things happen. All of this made people do the things. There were youngsters who postponed their weddings because they wanted to participate during the launch, and I just said Dhanteras Day 2015, just out of the blue, and everybody worked towards it. But the power of purpose, the power of positivity, the power of action, and the power of teamwork is really what moves companies and moves organizations. And the fourth lesson, therefore, never lose your winning spirit. I think this applies to individuals. We sometimes go through extremely excruciating times. We have personal disasters one after the other. We have professional disasters one after the other. I think it's always good for people to have an element of spirituality in them. It's important. But more important is to have a firm backbone that says, this too shall pass. Because many times you find people, and younger people more often than not, losing the sense of nerve. They say, my God, what am I going to do? But if you keep your winning spirit, someday, in the not too distant future, you will come back to winning positively. Even if it's a small win, it's a win for you. And never waste a crisis. We had a crisis. We said, what can we learn from this crisis? It happened. हमने बुलाया नहीं, आ गया. Right? I never embraced it, never said, please come, please come, please come. Now that you have come, what am I going to learn from it? What we learned from it is to jettison the things that have obstructed us in the past. The processes, the practices, the methodologies. And one of the things that we said was that as a company, we can launch more products. We have 2,000 brands as a company. No family planning in our brands. There is far too many brands. Huge number of brands. And we said, look, the challenge of the management in Nestle is not what to launch, but when to launch. There are so many products. So we went ahead and used the same processes, but we empowered people with the simple slogan saying, it is okay to fail. Because sometimes we don't give that license to people. We say, no, you have to succeed. You have to be perfect. We said it's okay to fail. And when you say it's okay to fail, you have 123 products that have got launched. More, some of them are successful, some of them are not successful. But that's the luck of the draw. That's what the industry is all about. I don't think Prabhuji here, when he puts up the temple in Vrindavan, is saying, oh my God, what happens if this doesn't succeed? He doesn't. He builds a huge, huge temple here. I don't think the vision is saying, suppose it doesn't work out. No. It will work out. With selflessness, with a guiding spirit, with inspiration, with motivation, with hard work, with energy, with drive, it will happen. That's the spirit of our lives. I think we too early and too soon we give up. And that's why I'm a little despondent when I go to some institutions and find students very crestfallen. There's a sense of lack of hope that, nothing much is going to happen. Nothing's going to happen to this country. Nothing's going to happen to the past situation. Nothing's going to happen to the road. Nothing's going to happen. I mean, okay, some of things maybe nothing happens, but something happens to you, which you can make happen. And that, I think, is important and not wasting a crisis. Steve Jobs, one of the illustrious innovators of our time, said, you can't connect the dots looking forward. You can only connect them looking backwards. So you have to trust the dots will somehow connect in the future. Life is a series of randomized events built by possibility, fueled by hope, and that will end in some positive outcomes or no positive outcomes. Nothing can be predicted in advance. That's the humility of realizing that we are mortals, that we are not immortals, we are not God, we can't predict beyond what we do. And the last point, failing to succeed. I think some of the things that we learned from failure, Alexander Fleming didn't find the penicillin mold when he was working in the laboratory. He went on holiday and came back and found the penicillin mold on his petri dish. You'd call that an accident, you'll call that fluke or whatever it is. But nevertheless, he never gave up and the rest is history. The bubble wrap paper, interestingly, was put as a wallpaper. The original owner, the discoverers of this said, we will market it as wallpaper. But just can you imagine a wallpaper with bubble wrap? Anyway, that was their idea. Till somebody wrapped fragile items in bubble wrap and it became a completely different industry. It opened up new vistas. I too had my own launch failure many years ago when I launched this drink called Treetop, which fell off the tree very quickly, right? But I learned a lesson in leadership. I learned a lesson in leadership because the leader of the team took the rap on his knuckles. He said, I'm the leader, I'm responsible. He could have finished me off, a junior flunky, and my wife and I would have gone on to some other pastures and gone to some other company probably. But he didn't. That is the call of leadership. Accountability is with you. Accessibility is with your team. And if you believe in that, you can do a much better job. So let me leave you with some lessons, overall lessons in leadership as a result of working all this time. There is opportunity in adversity. Don't look at adversity in the face and say, oh my God. Say, oh God, yes. Right? Because there could be something there for you. Don't be afraid of uncertainties. I think there are going to be more uncertainties in your life than you can bargain for. Prepare your muscles for it. Whether you work here, you work elsewhere, you do something else in life, personal, professional, this is something that will stand by you. Teamwork and achievement will drive credibility. We had all these kind words for Nestle at the beginning of this talk. It is not my doing, it's the team's doing. When there is unanimous praise for Akshaya Patra in all walks of life, it is not just the doing of one person, it's the doing of the entire team. That's how you become great. That's how your mission has become great. And I think that's something that if we forget, we become egocentric, and that is not a good thing for us. Always strive for can do, then will try. In organizations, you have two kinds of people. One is called the Gantt chart experts. They will draw out the process map for you. Okay, there is a fire, now there is a hydrant, that we'll call to the hydrant, we'll get a pipe there, we'll have to find the water, then we have to find the ladder, then the ladder will have to go up the building. By the time the building is on fire, it has completely become bhasma, and you are still figuring out the Gantt chart. And there are the other category of people, right, which I think Akshaya Patra has more of, who say, we will do it. So the can-do people than the will-try people are more important to the world becoming a better place. I'm not saying there's a bias against one, but it's important in organizations. People are at the center of everything you do. I think we talked about it. Volatility, keep a plan B ready. Even in your own business, keep a plan B ready. What could go wrong? What happens tomorrow if suddenly there's a change in government policy on something, right? How does that affect the outcome that you are seeking? I think it's important to always, we do it as a company, we always have a plan B, saying, okay, if this doesn't happen, this happens. When the Maggie crisis happened, my plan B was, maybe I have to shut down the company. What do I do about it? Bitter, very, very horrible thought to have, but somebody has to think through that. Never lose your winning spirit. I think we talked about it. It's all about keeping your spirit high all the time. Keep your eyes on reality, reality, reality. I think we forget it. In the corporate world, we forget reality. Because somebody else tells you reality. The more senior you become, somebody comes and tells you, sir, the sun rises in the east because of you. It will set in the west because of you. And you believe it. And you believe it. And you do actions around it. And you fail. And then you wonder why. Right? The word humility, the H hasn't entered the dictionary of many. Because you believe yourself to be invincible because people around you make you out to be invincible. Sir, you are God. You can do anything you want to. So it's important that the leader is the only one who sees reality. And your reality is defined by you. Constantly communicate, not less but more. If you are in a leadership role, you have to communicate. अगर मौन व्रत धारण करना है तो लीडर मत बनो. Because you have responsibility for your life, you don't have your responsibility for the other's life to make it miserable. So, आपको जो है करो, you do it. That God has given you full permission to do. Many times in leadership, people don't communicate. Why? Because they think that anyway they should be knowing it, no? No, but people don't know it. Every stage of any difficult chapter has to be communicated by the leader, because the leader is the person who has got the responsibility to share the good and the bad and the ugly with people in the organization. Keep to your values. I come back to it. I use these slides for business schools, so therefore for you it must be stuff that you already know. Be humble. I think the Dalai Lama said it beautifully. He said, humility gives you two characteristics. When you speak, you say what you know. When you hear different things. That's the power of humility. And this is an underestimated power. Even culturally in this country, you will find some parts of the country will cherish humility. Some other parts, including the part that I come from the north, will look at you and say, humble, ye to pagal aadmi hai. Ye to sant aadmi hai. He's not a person of the world. Right? But humility is a huge characteristic. It also gives you the third advantage. It gives you access. People within your organization will come and speak to you and say, sir, this is going wrong. Please take a look at it. I see that in my organization. Somebody will come and say, sir, you are saying about these things, but this is not happening. I don't take it as an affront. I take it as, okay, something needs to be done. But it's because I don't make myself overbearing, saying you will have to come to me through a prior appointment, fixed 7 days before, right? Pre-lunch, post-lunch, post-dinner, after dinner, whatever, right? It's none of those are predicated that you have this. Stay connected. And above all, be human. I think you have one life on this planet. God has given us one life. I think that life is meant to be lived well, to be lived with happiness. I keep telling young management graduates, you measure yourself by success, which is materiality. Measure yourself by happiness, which is inner peace, inner strength, and a certain capability to get up every morning and look at the sunrise and say, this is a great day and I want to be part of that day. More often than not, you look at it, getting yourself caught in. Above all, be human. Let me leave you with a last quote of Sir Winston Churchill. Success is not final. Failure is not fatal. It is the courage to continue that counts. Thank you all very much for your patient listening. I hope this has been of some use to you. Thank you.
Suresh sir, thank you so much for this insightful talk. I learned so many things which is not taught in the management school. Sir, in one of the forums, you had spoken about, you don't have to be aggressive. You mentioned that, I think few things you mentioned. Insaniyat, ibadat, inayat. Right? So can you a little bit elaborate on that? Because generally the general perception is one needs to be very aggressive, very performance oriented, and then things happen. And you had flipped it around when you spoke about it actually.
No, I think good question, Sridhar. I think this is coming from a deep sense of anxiety about the way in which management practices are being conducted in some of the most respected organizations today. I think we are becoming a group of insensitive, completely self-centered and totally short-term oriented people. The behavior in the stock market trains you to be like that, right? And you become a slave of that mentality. So the three things that I talked about was inayat, which is decency. Why is it so difficult to be decent and respectful? It is seen some places as a sign of weakness. That why is he decent? Ye kamjor hoga. He's a weak fellow. He's being so. I think that is the inayat. Ibadat, everything, every management act that you take is a prayer. It is a prayer, right? It's a prayer to the best intentions, the best interventions, the best hard work, and the best hope of individuals to make things happen. And you as a leader can only do ibadat. You can't drag the person by the neck and say, I want this done that way. I mean, there was a time that was happening, but today that's not the way things are done. And the third one is insaniyat. It's so difficult for us to sometimes be human without the trappings of power, position, prestige, and ego. We cannot. We cannot be, I've always believed, and I've practiced this, that my respect for the guy who serves me coffee is the same respect I have for my global chairman. They are both insan. I have to treat them well. I can't treat this man badly simply because he happens to be a guy who's serving me coffee. But in today's world, unfortunately, these things are getting lost. And unfortunately, it's also done in the context of business schools, where ethics and moral training is the least priority for them. Strategy, operations, marketing, analytics, all that is top-notch. And sometimes you see that behavior happening in the ground reality, and you realize that if these youngsters had been given some such inkling in their lives, they would be even better professionals. So it was in that context that I made that remark. Look, I think my inspiration in life has not been so much my bosses as members of my family. So my grandmother, my mom, my wife, and my daughter have been the overriding inspiration for me. And one of the things that my grandmother once told me, my maternal grandmother once told me, she said, take care of people and the rest will take care of itself. And I think she was an 8th standard or 9th standard pass, got married when she was very young, but was worldly wise. So that left a deep impression in my mind that there is something true in what she is saying. And I tried to practice it. Initially it was hesitant, it was difficult. When you are young, what happens is that your ambition gets ahead of you. So you try and behave as if I have to get it. I don't care if I have to mow down a couple of people to make it happen. And then you realize with time, age, experience, and wisdom that was such a stupid thing that you did. Right? So I think that was the best piece of advice that I got. And one of the piece of advice that I got from my father early in my career, he said, you never choose your parents and you never choose your boss. These are two things, and he told me this when I started my career. He said, son, you have not chosen me and your mother as your parents. You like us, don't like us, that's not it's a historical reality. And the second one is your boss. He may be good, he may be bad, he may be ugly, he may be receptive, he may be an absolute boorish tyrant. You have to learn to cope with it. Thank you. If I were to summarize my learnings on this, and maybe some of this it is true and some of it will evolve, there are 3 principles that I have tried to use. Number 1 is to be consistently consistent in your purpose and values. I think as the statement once I read, as sure as sunrise, as clear as a pond. I think it's important that your people know where you stand. Some bosses or some leaders like to be unpredictable. Today sunshine, tomorrow monsoon, third day something else. It leaves people unhinged. So consistency in purpose and values. And secondly is the target is the problem, not the person. Never target the person as the problem. So if there is a problem, there is something, some glitch has happened in the organization, target the problem itself, not that she has done it or he has done it or somebody else has done it. Because then people don't feel threatened about it. And third, a leader needs to understand that every human being has got his own motivation or her own motivation. So I believe in the philosophy of different strokes for different folks. So once I work with you, I'll know how to get the best out of you. Some people are prone to praise. Some people are prone to challenge. Some people are prone to insinuation. Tumhare se to hoga hi nahi. Then they'll say, okay, I'll show you. Right? And somebody else, if you use the same technique, might say, what the hell, he's insulting me. So I think these 2-3 principles, but the first one is the most important. to be as sure as sunrise, as clear as a pond. No one should have a doubt that if this problem were escalated to this leader, this will be the response. Sometimes it goes against the grain of management theory, because management theory says that you have to be a little bit ambiguous sometimes, right? But I've always believed to be clear. People should know where you stand, and once they know where you stand, I think rest follows. Thank you. Sure.
Hi, sir. So both the institutions are more of child-centric program. So going back to your childhood days, could you share some light things you had in your school lunch time, one thing, and what leadership qualities you carried during your school days?
Very good question. When I was in Rishi Valley, I thought that the lunch was terrible. But in later years, I realized it was the best lunch served in any hostel, in any school in this country. So sometimes, familiarity breeds contempt. So you look at it and you say that that this is not the best food. I think what lingers in my childhood memory is the fact that I made friends for life. Even now, all the 27 people, students in my batch, it was a small school. Rishi Valley has only about 400 odd students because the philosopher Krishnamurti wanted learning to be very tight, not with 100 and 200 students in a class. We still are friends. We still meet, and we still carry common bonds in terms of our values and purpose, right? And I think that for me is extremely important. There are things that I can share with them that I can't share with any other close friend, simply because we've been at Rishi Valley and we know what each other's reactions to situations will be. But I think my lasting learning from Rishi Valley was the importance of respect, decency, and values. That was my lasting, and it took a while for me to adjust myself when I came into the wide world, because you're in a little lovely valley, 150 acres, and you don't have a shortage for anything. When I had to stand in a queue in Delhi University to take my application form, I realized, my God, this is a rat race. People were running ahead of me, and I was telling them, okay, please stand. Till my mother told me that at this rate you'll get admission to no college, because everybody you are just saying, first go. So these are dissonances that happen, but you do learn. And the beauty is, all my batchmates who are now, and we are all senior citizens, but we've all done reasonably well in life. In whatever we've done reasonably well. So nobody is a complete failure, despite being in an environment which is doomed for failure by some people, saying this kind of things do not work. It's a larger belief that I've always had, that people make things matter. It gives two advantages. One, it helps focus on the core issue. The minute I make it as an issue that reflects me, then I will rule out some decisions that are not favorable to me. So I will say, no, but this will, When I came back from Philippines, God was kind to me, and the team was doing extremely well, and we managed to come out of this. Suppose it had been a failure. What is the worst that could have happened to me? I would have been fired by the company and said, no, you've not been able to resolve it. And if I made it a personal issue, it will hurt me even more. That I was humiliated, and these humiliations last for life. I've seen friends who have been through that trauma. Even though they are comfortably off and they are doing well in life, it always hurts them to say that, these people treated me badly. So when you internalize a problem, you do not externalize the consequences. Whereas in a large problem, you have to externalize the problem and externalize the consequences. So you are a player, but it is not going to reflect on you as a person, or it will not change you as a person. Because if you allow that to happen, then you will become bitter, you will become suspicious, you will do all the things which are incorrect as far as what the demand of that situation is. So that's how I've been able to keep my head above water. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. I hope I've been of some use. I mean, I know that I am showing a candle to the sun because Akshaya Patra is an institution which is a sun, and I'm showing a candle to it, but I hope that it has been of some use to you. Thank you.
And thank you for Chandrani, thank you Mukesh, Sridhar for making this happen, because otherwise I don't know whether we would have ever had an opportunity to meet someone like this and get his learnings. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir. Also, along with it, I would like to thank ma'am, Suresh Narayanan. Thank you so much. Sir did mention quite a bit of times, about how his family has been instrumental in his success, right? And taking Nestle to where it is. And he also mentioned about grandmother, mother, daughter, and wife, right? And that shows the kind of humility that he brings in, and the inspiration that the family also gives him. So as the quote says that behind every successful man there is a woman, but here we have 3-4 women behind his life. So thank you to all of you. So with this we end our series today.